Hello, everybody. How are you today? Awesome. Well, we're right there. We're actually a couple minutes over, so we'll go ahead and get going. I want to welcome everybody out to GEWKC. How I scaled it. Now, we really want this to be, I feel like we're so far away. Let me move over to this one. I really want this to be a conversation because how many are familiar with the Small Business Development Center? All right, a lot of hands. Oh, man, that makes me feel great. So I am a senior business development consultant with the SBDC. And what that means is I get the honor and the pleasure of consulting and facilitating some amazing programming for entrepreneurs. Now, what the SBDC is we are funded primarily by the SBA. So the SBA keeps our doors open, and we are a community-facing resource of the SBA. So no-cost resources for small businesses. And one of the things that is kind of a pride and joy for the SBDC is our cohort that we run called Scale Up. So you see it at the bottom of cohort. So if anybody's a business owner, and as we're talking about this, is something that you want to engage in, feel free to scan that, get more information about that. But Scale Up is a cohort of scaling businesses right here in Kansas City. We've got over 200 alumni over the last 10 years that we've done this program. And so we thought it'd be a great idea to pull together a panel of some of our alumni and have this conversation, because we know being in business is so hard. So we wanted to hear from some of the folks who are getting it done and are actually scaling their business and seeing some growth, and have a conversation about how I scaled it. Is that okay with you guys? Good? All right, perfect. All right, so who we have here, what we're gonna do first is, we wanna know who's here. You see their names up there and what businesses they run, some amazing businesses. But the way I always explain it is, a business is really just this repeatable system for which we create value, for a customer by solving a problem. So with our introduction, we want to keep it short and brief and concise. I want each of you all to go around and just talk about who you are, what your business is, but specifically, what problem do you solve for your customers? We can start at the end and come on down.
All right, I'll start on the end. My name is Abdul Rasak Yahya, and I am owner and co-founder of Open Minds Child Development Center. We are an early childhood education center based in Olathe. And the problem we solve is in the name, care for your children. One of the things in our communities, and honestly throughout the United States, is the shortage in quality care for your children. So that actually stifles the workforce, because if you don't have care for your child, then we can't stimulate the workforce. So we are solving multiple universal problems in the United States.
Thank you.
Hello, Jeff Dutzel, Dutzel's Catering. I started in 2009 part-time as a marketing teacher at the high school level, then a school admin. Left education in 19 to turn catering into a full-time gig. We are a higher-end full-service catering company. So we've got a higher touch point than a traditional budget caterer. We don't do really drop-off catering. We have in-house rentals, so we don't have to send the client outside. We have our liquor permit, so we do a lot of in-house things that can give the customer that top-notch experience that they're looking for.
Hey, I'm Ian Davis. I own Blip Coffee Roasters in the West Bottoms. Started in coffee in Kansas City in 2009, and we're a coffee roaster, so we wholesale coffee to offices, restaurants, coffee shops. And then we operate a coffee shop in the West Bottoms, serving that neighborhood and the growing kind of western downtown area that we've got open 7 days a week.
Thank you. Ian, keep that mic, man, because we'll start with you. You mentioned you're in the West Bottoms. amazing location. As we know, there's a lot going on in the West Bottoms right now. And so, did you have some sort of crystal ball that led you to the West Bottoms? Or talk about, because we know it's important. Location is important to grow and scale, but talk about the location that you're in, what you're looking forward to, and how you feel like that's gonna also impact your growth and your scalability within your company.
Yeah, so we opened in the West Bottoms in 2014, and the West Bottoms still has a lot of growth ahead of it, but 10 years ago it was even more desolate. So we kind of ended up there through the connections that I had, and really just recognizing that there's all sorts of communities in Kansas City, and the West Bottoms has always been a hub for manufacturing, for artists, and it will continue to be, as we see the developments that are happening down there. So it's, we've been dragging our customers down to that neighborhood for the last decade, but we're really seeing the investment start to pay off. So we just Samara Road just broke ground on a 25-acre development just down the street from us on Mulberry that is going to be about 1,200 apartments, a boutique hotel, 250,000 square feet of officing. And then, there's all sorts of private development going on. We're also seeing a lot of public infrastructure come down. So the Heritage Riverfront Trail that connects the KC Current, Berkeley Riverfront Park development comes down into the West Bottoms over to KCK. That connects to the Green Line project, if you guys are familiar with that. So we're seeing a lot of private development as well as public infrastructure come down.
And that sounds like that's just going to be amazing. So what would you say to an entrepreneur, right, that's looking for that next location? They're expanding their brick and mortar, or they're like, hey, I'm going to go into and open my own physical location as it pertains to picking a location. Now, I want you to talk about that from your perspective, because I know you didn't necessarily know what was happening down there. But I mean, what would you say to the entrepreneur that's facing that right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a risk taker, so I can't say that anyone should heed this advice. But looking at Kansas City, we're kind of this mid-major Midwestern market, and looking at the neighborhoods in Kansas City, you could take a compass and drop it in the middle of downtown and draw your circle, and the neighborhoods that you can see that have the most upside, you really hit the West Bottoms, you hit the riverfront, and then you hit just about everything else that's already seen a huge amount of development. So for me, at least, I wanted to be somewhere that could experience slow and steady growth, for a long period of time, as opposed to, entering a market or a neighborhood that, might have been really busy or really hot 10 years ago, but, might not be able to continue to see that growth.
Absolutely. And Ian said, hey, I'm a risk taker, right? And I think the other two gentlemen up here would probably say the same, right? So, and I'll throw this up for either of you. Like, talk to me about your appetite for risk and what role it plays, right, in the way you've grown your business thus far.
I guess I'll start. My appetite for risk is, I would say, high. Luckily, I have a business partner who balances me out. But in the 10 years that we have been in business, we have scaled up to 5 locations. We are down to 2, but when I say down to 2, scaling is not quantity, it's actually quality. And so some of those ventures that we did were partnerships. We partnered with the federal government. You can decide on whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. It just depends on your venture. We also partnered with actually operating someone else's child care center to help them bring the quality. But then ultimately we just found that you have to embrace the community that's embracing you. And where we're at currently, we've been able to scale significantly. We have nearly 200 students. We have nearly 50 employees. It was up to 60 at one point. And so all these, when you say risk, it's more so risk management. My background in civil engineering, making sure that you can take that step forward or maybe take a step back.
I like that. So risk management. There's risk in anything, right? And so you look at it as, well, if I keep doing this, I got these risks, but I could jump off the porch, so to speak, and take a risk for my business, and that may mean something else for me, right? As long as you kind of know as well as you can the ups and downs of those risks. So you mentioned quality over quantity as a mindset around scaling, right? And Jeff's probably gonna get. I mean, you're probably gonna get tired of this reference, but every time I listen to the radio, I hear we can get you 200 sandwiches in 60 minutes, right? And that's not Jeff, right? That's Grandma's Catering, right? If anybody was wondering, and he's probably gonna get sick of me using this reference. But when I heard quality versus quantity, Jeff is on that quality side of the catering business, and he's been able to scale it not by thinking about low cost food, but by thinking about an experience. Jeff, can you talk about that, like how just that phrase, quality versus quantity, impacts the way you do business at Dussel's Catering?
Yeah, so of course I'm wanting to reach end of year sales goals, and I'm telling the sales team sell. December is very busy. We had an inquiry come in for a holiday party for a lunch order on a Thursday, and that's our 3 busiest days of December, that Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We told the client we've got a $5,000 minimum for that day. They were appalled that we would charge a minimum of $5,000 for a luncheon. And it goes back to the level that my team needs to prepare for what we're doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday is more important than just selling a whole bunch of last minute drop off lunch orders. And so, being mindful of, yes, we want to reach sales goals and we want to, take on more business. Not all business is good business. And if we take on a $2,000 lunch order and that, makes the kitchen team over their capacity, and then they're dropping the ball on a $45,000 holiday party on Saturday, that's going to put us in, a real bad situation with that client. So being mindful of, taking on stuff, but making sure what you're taking on is what's best for the business, what's best for your team, and then your clients. So right now we're having that balancing act of every day reviewing the calendar with the kitchen team and the sales team, and what days do we have available? Are we at capacity on that day in December? And then it goes beyond just the holidays. We look at that for weekends. September and October is very busy for weddings, and so just making sure that when you are taking on something, it's the right decision.
So Jeff, what I'm hearing, you take a very, very calculated approach. Like, all money's not good money. That is a gem, and it's so true. We hear it all the time. But in business, sometimes we can take on a big job and figure out, oh, it looks great from a top line standpoint, but it causes so much issues. Like, my team doesn't like me anymore because I said yes to this job. So I hear you're taking a very calculated approach to the way you do business. One of the things that that we all know about people is sometimes we can make plans and try to be as efficient as possible within our business, but sometimes people don't quite align with that. People are so freaking I'm talking about you guys. We are just we're unpredictable, right? So I'd love to hear, and I know one challenge that all businesses face when you think about scaling is, how do I manage my human resource, right? How do I find the right people, train the right people, keep them rowing in the right direction? And this is something I'm really interested in, so I want to hear all of your take on that. We'll start, Ian, with you. What's your approach to people within your business?
I can't say that I have like a very clearly defined approach. I think that what I've found to be successful is just being consistent and showing up and being there for your staff, being there for your customers. It might not always be perfect, but being available and being consistent, I think, has worked for me.
Available and consistent. Absolutely. Absolutely. Jeff, what would you say to that?
Can you repeat the question, please?
So, so what's, in essence, and I'll kind of rephrase it, what's your approach to the most important resource, but then also the most unpredictable resource within your business, which is your people?
Yeah, so we have a high focus on company culture, our core values, our mission. We're working as a team. And so it's really important that our team aligns with those core values and, we're doing what everybody should be doing. For the most part, everybody works well together. Holding people accountable is super important. Making sure everybody knows the expectation. When we're busy, it looks like, maybe chaos, but it really is organized chaos. And I think the biggest thing is the holding people accountable. One thing I've recently learned is as you scale your company, your A players might not be your A players any longer. As you transform your business, growth and scaling might be hard for those original employees, and they might not be ready to come along for that ride. And so, making those decisions, and it's hard, but you've got to do what's best for not only you and your business, but also your team. And so I think,
So Open Minds was founded with the focal point of our teachers. Our teachers are our most valuable resource. It was modeled after my favorite teacher, my wife, Alicia. And so we centered elevating the status of an early childhood educator. So many times people call it a daycare, or she will always say, you don't manage the day. And so really, it was important to elevate that teacher status as the same as if you came into the room and said you were a doctor and or entrepreneur and or a lawyer. And so we were able to do that starting with the focus on the teacher and allowing them to feel that. And that transpires into how they care and educate your teacher, your students. And so that has been one of the most impactful things. Alicia actually just came from have a coffee with the director just before this, just giving a one-on-one time with the teachers, what's going on in the classroom, what can we do better? So everything's based off of ratio in our industry. So if a teacher doesn't show up, we have a challenge in care. And so we want to make sure that they continue to show up, but they also show up and they are happy so that the kids can be happy.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Yeah, and hats off to all of you because I look at the group that's up here. Everybody's creating jobs and really stimulating the economy here in Kansas City with the businesses that are here. I joke about people being unpredictable, but I remember. So at one point I was a State Farm agent, right? And so I had a agency over in Overland Park. And I remember one of my sales team members, he was a young guy, he was really good, but he was really independable. And so I remember walking into his office one day, and he's sitting there with his hands on his keyboard and his eyes are closed, right? So I sit there for a little bit and I just sit there and watch him, right? Just to make sure it's not a long blink. And sure enough, he was taking a nap, just unintentionally, maybe stayed up too late. And I slapped the wall. Boom, get up, Chris. And he wakes up, man, I was just, and he started making excuses. I was praying, right? And I said, oh, okay. And so I think about moments like that where on one hand, I'm like, but on the other hand, I'm like, oh man, people are always gonna be people. It's kind of fun, right? Can you guys think of a moment, funny story, interesting interaction? I'm gonna challenge y'all now. I gave them questions before this, and I'm completely going off the rails. So we're going in a different direction, just to keep them on it. They're business owners; they can handle it. Maybe an interesting or a funny story about your interactions with an employee and how that worked out for you. Then we'll go a different direction. I just want to see. Everybody don't have to answer, but go ahead, Jeff.
okay, I wouldn't say this is funny, but hired a chef within his first 30 days. He was using his company purchasing card to buy personal stuff. And the way that I caught it was he turned in a receipt. Normally I don't really look at the receipts until, the next month when I'm reconciling. He turned in a receipt that he had went to Quick Trip. He bought a slushie and whatever else and some vodka. Scratched the vodka out and then wrote a new total as if he was turning in that receipt to be reimbursed, but he didn't want to be reimbursed for the vodka because obviously you don't buy alcohol with, company money. But he used a company card, so like I already paid for the alcohol. Like he bought the alcohol with the company card. Had he not scratched it out, I probably wouldn't even realized it until the next month when I was reconciling and going through those expenses. But
so basically, he made you pay for the vodka, so you didn't reimburse him for the vodka. So
no,
he said
because he already bought it with the company card. And
Oh,
so, when I met with him, obviously he was terminated for multiple reasons, but he really thought that was no big deal because he'd been working hard. And, the HR consultant that I had, asked, well, what time was that receipt? And it's like, oh, it was 1 o'clock, right in the middle of the working day. So,
wow. Interesting. Anything to add to that? If not, I know that's a tough one.
I mean, I guess I'll tell the story. Hopefully, I can't see my wife's face, so she's probably cringing. But more so, just being a male in this industry is sometimes unsettling for parents, even though I'm a father of 4, right? And so early on in the business, if we couldn't hire that teacher fast enough, I would have to step into the room. And so it was interesting, funny stories is interaction with parents when I was the infant teacher for at least a couple of days. And so you're dropping off with, me, and they're like, who are you? I'm like, well, I'm the owner, but I'm also the teacher today. But what's great about that is some of my early on children have graduated and gone to pre-K or gone to kindergarten, and their parents come to me this day and it's like, Abdul, you're my kiddo's favorite teacher. And I was like, well, I'm glad I didn't have to be their teacher forever.
That's good. That's good. I can imagine bringing my, I got a 10-month-old, and then this guy with all these muscles, man, taking my baby from me, right? No, that's awesome. That's a good story. So, so as I mentioned before, all of these gentlemen and myself, actually, we all came through the Scale Up program through SBDC. It's a 16-week cohort, right? 16 weeks. Once a week, spending 3 to 4 hours doing deep dives on your business, from financials to marketing to strategy, the whole thing. And then they sit up here and give a presentation at the end. We have a cohort now that's actually graduating on Thursday. And so now we're on our 14th cohort, but this was unintentional. Which cohorts did you all graduate from? Talk to me. Let me ask a better question than that. So, I want you to share which cohort you came through, right? But then I also want you, and I'm gonna have some follow-up questions around this. What was your biggest aha moment through that Scale Up program? All right, so, and we can work it from here that way.
I think I was cohort 11.
12.
12?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, we forget things. COVID just messes up the years and stuff like that. So that's all good. So 12.
Yeah, it was an excellent program. I'm a doer. I'm a creative, and so in a lot of ways that gets a lot of things done. But in so many other ways that lets a lot of stuff kind of fall to the wayside. And so really giving the time and the effort into, the smaller, but necessary ins and outs of the business, was, came at a great time, right after COVID, kind of rebuilding the business, getting things back open, and being able to dive in with, other business owners as well as, excellent presenters, whether that was about taxes or, infrastructure, sales.
Jeff, what would you say to that?
I was cohort 13. As you grow your business, you hear you need to work on your business, not in your business. Going through Scale Up really gave you that opportunity to block off half a day once a week for 16 weeks where you're going to go and better yourself so you can better the business. During that time, there's an overwhelming amount of tasks and strategic thinking that you can do to better your business. And I think the overarching thing is every decision you make needs to be, a thought out decision, and what is the impact going to be, and is it going to, better your business? For me, I basically took everything that I wanted to take away from Scale Up and put it on a spreadsheet and prioritize it with what's the most important thing that I need to get started on now. Everything's not done yet. I went through the program last year, but you can update it as you go. But basically, the overarching theme with all of those is every decision you make needs to be strategically thought out, and what's the impact going to be. With going through it and blocking out a half a day, I still try to reserve one day a week to where I'm working on the business. I'm not setting up meetings. My team's not, bothering me. So I can really, work on the business to help the team and better the business.
Working on the business, man. That is such a cliche, and I think it's undervalued. Not in a bad way, Jeff. What I meant by that, let me clean that up. I think it is terribly undervalued how important it is. Like when you say working on the business, y'all hear working on the. I hear like, man, this is like some of the most valuable time that I could spend away from the day-to-day whirlwind of what we do as business owners, right? A time to step back and really get clarity and give direction to the people who are depending on this business for jobs, right? And for my family and for the future of the thing we're building. So it is so easy to get caught up and say, oh, I can do it, so therefore I will do it. And so we always argue that just because you can doesn't mean you should be doing things within your business, right? Abdul, I'll give you a chance to answer that as well.
So I was part of cohort 11 during COVID. So we were completely on Zoom, and Scale Up came at a time when the world said disconnect. But as an entrepreneur, you needed that connection. So Scale Up literally was able to help us navigate through COVID. Being in childcare, highly regulated, we went from essential workers to not essential workers, to provide care for essential workers, to only provide 50% care for essential workers. All those different regulations, literally, we'd have a admin meeting on Sunday to read what your state, local, and national regulations were when it comes to childcare. And so I would just take that on Thursday and be like, listen, this is the regulations I got to work with. Can you guys help me? And so that was really important for our ability to scale, because being told that you can only care for 50% of the capacity in which your center can hold, but knowing that it takes at least 60% capacity to pay your rent is a daunting challenge.
Wow. No, that's and I think the interesting thing is COVID. You can't mention anything modern now without talking about the impacts that COVID had. And as entrepreneurs, we all have these challenges, and I know each of you have had some very, very unique challenges and shown a lot of resiliency getting over those challenges from COVID. Abdul, you guys stayed open. So I imagine in your cohort, most of the other businesses were completely shutting down. You're open. And so was that a mandate, or was that a decision that you all made? And how did that affect you guys' relationship with the community you were serving?
So that was definitely a decision to make to stay open. We are not a franchise. We had just been founded maybe a few years before. What was crazy is it was spring break, and my wife was in Minneapolis with the kids on spring break. And on a Thursday, the governor said we're closing school down. She drove back down. On Friday, we closed our schools. We had a staff meeting over the weekend, and we decided to stay open. So we were only closed on that Monday and open back on Tuesday. The reason for that is we didn't have a coffers of money to be able to just close and continue to pay our staff. And so what we essentially asked our parents to do was to continue to pay us while your kids stayed home, because at that time, initially, most employers were still paying their staff. But we told them, if we close and you don't pay us, or we stay open and you don't pay us, your teachers won't be here. And so that's a ripple effect on the whole ecosystem, because these teachers are gonna go outside of the field and not return. And that's another thing that we, as a business, are really trying to establish, making sure that we bring those educators back to our field.
So how was it received, right? So I imagine that was nerve wracking when you were typing the email or writing a letter to say, hey, can you continue to pay us even though you're at home with your kids?
I mean, that was the hardest send to ever press. But it was also the most sincere thing we've ever done. And the response from the community was just outstanding in terms of embracing us, because they knew that we were a family-run business. We always, our staple is we have franchise amenities with the family feel. And so they were just like, no, we'll definitely make sure we want to support that teacher. We want that teacher to be here when our kid comes back. And that's really what it was about, those relationships we built prior to COVID.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And so, like, one of the things that keeps running through my mind is the importance of the entrepreneurial mindset. If you're here today, you know that it takes a certain. It's not academics. There's no book that tells you how to come up with a strategy for when the world shut down, right? And so to think about the entrepreneurial mindset. So if anybody here is either aspiring or a new entrepreneur, understand, and by nod of head, it's hard, right? And I'm not to scare you, but I just admire that. And if it's in you and you find something, so I do want to ask the question before I jump off of COVID, because Ian, I really want to lean in on this entrepreneurial mindset. COVID challenged that in all of us, right? If you survive through it, congratulations. So like they should give us a badge or something out for that. But Ian, you had a unique issue to where your business found itself in a crazy situation around COVID as well. Do you mind sharing that? Or
Yeah, and just like everyone did, we all had to make decisions off of the information we were given. When COVID hit, we had 2 locations in Kansas City. So we had our cafe and roasting facility in the West Bottoms, and then we also had another cafe, Caddy Corner from Ruby Jeans at 30th and Troost in the Wonder Bread Bakery. In Kansas City at the time, we were like, oh, we'll put out hand sanitizer, it'll be fine. But we had other coffee contacts on the West Coast where things were kind of progressing a little faster. And their advice was to shut down, get everyone on unemployment, because the unemployment websites were going to crash. And we're like, what are you talking about? Like, we're good. We got the hand sanitizer. But it was coming from folks that we really respect. And so we put that to the staff, and that was the decision that we made. And so, this was before all these other shutdowns had started. And so we got a call from the unemployment office, they're like, oh, is everything okay? Long story short, that worked out best for our staff. Since they were already signed up for unemployment, the websites did crash. They were able to get their funds, as the additional funding came through for unemployed folks at the time. But the decision for our business, resulted in us walking away from the shop in the West Bottoms and the shop on Troost. And so we were closed for about 6 months. And, I just went to work every day, and we reopened 6 months later at our current shop.
And what that speaks, so you shut down, you could have walked away and been like, I'm done with this thing, right? No, I'm gonna keep it going, right? So what I hear in that is kind of this lesson around one is it's not going to be easy. It's not a cakewalk. Your social media stuff looks freaking amazing. Everybody and all of you guys just do. But we all look at that. We look at people's things, but that doesn't tell the whole story. I love the grit that all of you all have shown. So I want to switch gears a little bit because I know one of the least favorite topic is that as I go out and consult with small businesses and we do these cohorts and these learning environments, one of the least favorite topics for any entrepreneur is what would y'all say? What would y'all say? Somebody just call it out. What do you think is the least favorite topic for entrepreneurs? I heard budgets, I think. Somebody said budgets. Taxes. Oh, taxes. That's a good one. I didn't think of that. But it's right there. It's right there, right? Financials, right? Financials, taxes, budgets. I think I heard budgets over there. Is one of the things that's like, ick, I love doing this thing, but now you mean to tell me I got to put math with it, right? And I know within, you guys are probably before Scale Up had a great mind around how to look at numbers, and then we went through and we talk about it through that cohort. But talk to me how you guys look at what role does your financials play? Because I want to help somebody. What role does your financials play in the way you run your business, in the way you make decisions as an entrepreneur? And whoever wants to go can pick it up first.
So I'll jump in. I started with zero cash. So I sold. I moved back to Kansas City from Charleston, South Carolina, and bought my first coffee roaster. Sold my Tacoma, and just went for it. And again, please don't say I got this advice from Ian. So this is why I made a decision. But for me, what I've been able to do is just build it really slow and steady. I don't think that I think what we've all learned through everything is that there's no right or wrong way to run a business. Just because it's a successful platform for someone else doesn't mean that that's what you have to do. You could have one employee or 100. You can run a profitable business. Any way that you see fit. So, we've always just operated really small, as we can.
So take your time. Don't rush it. How many times do you see entrepreneurs get in a rush? I got to get to the next thing, the next one, I got to get 2 employees, another location, right? So you're saying, hey, dig your heels in and take your time and see that slow, steady growth, right? Jeff, what would you say to that?
Very similar with Ian. We, other than COVID money, we never took out a loan. We bought a building which is actually owned by my real estate company. And so slow growth. We don't need the most expensive oven. We need, when we moved into or renovated the kitchen, a lot of that stuff was used equipment from auctions. My staff thinks we need 10 more full-time staff. Looking at those financials, we can't afford 10 staff. If we're adding a staff person, a full-time, is that revenue generating? What are they going to do to make us either more efficient or more money? And I think just reminding your team, I don't share all the financials, but they know, if we're having a good month or a bad month, they know what our sales are. But making decisions based on those financials and, not being, one of the things through Scale Up is like, are you, that I took away is, are you reviewing your financials, on the 5th or the 10th of the month? Are you reconciling the month before, or are you waiting until your accountant calls you because it's quarterly tax time and you haven't reconciled your finances for, 3 or 6 months? Just being on top of it and knowing where you're at financially and, how a decision is going to impact your finances.
So I may be a unicorn up here. So my background is civil engineering, so I love a good spreadsheet. But Open Minds was founded through a necessity. Me and my wife, we had 3 kids that were 4 and under. So the spreadsheet was not balancing how to afford childcare. And so we actually set out to create affordable, high quality childcare. Now, yes, I said affordable and I said high quality. It doesn't mean cheap. But what we learned to do is balance our financials by what we call layered funding. So yes, you have the tuition that the parents pay, but we're an LLC, so we can't necessarily get grants. Well, that's not my mindset. So we were able to actually leverage partnerships with nonprofits to filter grants through our program. Also, Early Head Start is a federal program. All those different things is what we try to build into our program in order to provide affordable, high quality childcare. In our first years, we did a 5K, and this 5K was something put on by the Parent Teacher Association. And the whole concept was that all the revenue from this 5K is gonna go to all the toys and supplies that have to be replaced, not because of your kid, but just say another kid, right? But this will allow us to hold tuition instead of raising it by 10%. So layered funding, knowing your financials, but Scale Up really gave me that insight on how to balance that every day.
I love that. I absolutely love that, because what you're doing is a really a creative solution that probably would have never been arrived at unless they were looking at the numbers, right? I can tell you that sometimes, once or twice throughout the city of Kansas City, entrepreneurs say, I want to provide something affordable, and I'm going to set my price this because this is what people are going to pay, because this is what I would pay. And that's what they charge. And then they quickly go out of business because that number was not the right number. But what I love about what you said is, this is what we need to charge, and this is what people can pay, so we can figure out how to fill the gap for them because we want to solve that problem. And I think it was driven by the heart behind what you guys believe in, what you want to do for your community. That's awesome. Abdul, I want to stay with you on that because you mentioned something earlier, and it stuck to me. You said, we run our business off of ratios. And yeah, don't think I didn't hear you say that, because I like numbers too. So talk to me a little bit about what that means, and for your business, and when you think about what that means for small business in general from a financial standpoint, to look at those ratios as you're scaling your business.
Yes, definitely ratios is a guiding factor in how we decide to do anything. And trying to provide a working wage for our teachers is important. So when we first opened, just in the smallest age group of infants, which is 0 to 12 months, the ratio was 1 to 3. Well, you have to understand, and with a maximum capacity of 9 kids in that room, we got to understand that it takes at least 2 kiddos to pay the 1 teacher. So you have to decide, do I enroll that 3rd kid, or do I wait to get 2 more in order to balance it out? But also you have the need of the parent. And so that is really a guiding factor. Another thing that's very important is making sure you keep up on your regulations. So just this past August, which we've been lobbying all the childcare industry, was to increase ratios. So the ratios now for infants is 1 to 4. Now you're like, well, that sounds like a lot. Don't worry, New Jersey is like 1 to 6. So we on the high level. But it's very important to just know that you have to trust those individuals in that care and knowing what they're doing. Because it's so easy to, like you say, grow. Oh, just enroll. But you don't actually have the resources in place in order to scale. Growth is not always a good thing because with growth comes expenses.
That's a good point. So there's a difference between growth and the scale. And a lot of people, they say, well, what's the difference? They're the same thing. I'm growing my business, I'm scaling my business, and they use those phrases interchangeably. The way we like to define it is, you can reach, we're talking about scaling whenever you're looking at those financial statements and you get to a point where you can keep those expenses as level as possible and still grow top line revenue. Generally, when you're talking about, hey, I'm just growing my business, you see a correlation with top line revenue and the expenses it takes to get there. Every business owner aspires at some point, how can I level out those expenses and still see some some top line growth, right? And then also, how can I repeat this thing and do it again and repeat it again and be able to predict this is what my expenses are going to be, as accurately as possible. So you mentioned I have a 10-month-old, Abdul. I don't know if you know this, and so I can't imagine you got a new baby. Congratulations, new baby, brand new baby. I could not imagine having even 4 10-month-olds to one person. So hats off to the people who serve our kids, But so I wanted to switch gears a little bit within that. On that note, so we, when from a financial standpoint, through Scale Up, through the SBDC as a whole, right? Not every Scale Up is not for every level of business. Generally, what we do is we have a cohort called New Venture. New Venture is facilitated by Joel Barrett, who's a fantastic one of my colleagues over at the SBDC. And so if anybody's like, hey, I got a new thing I'm starting and I really want to get that going, that's the place where you go to, and he's going to challenge that. Sometimes you may walk away from that and say, you know what, maybe I didn't need that. I don't need to open a business. But more times than not, you're going to walk away like, okay, I have a really good idea of what I need to do and how I need to take to the next step. Then there's Growth 360. Did any of you guys go through Growth 360? No. So Growth 360 is kind of the next level, growing businesses, and then there's our Scale Up cohort. So within that though, we do spend a lot of time on all of these different subjects within the business. But one thing I want to talk about, because you all have you're all in these areas of business. For instance, Ian, I was looking at a resource through the Mid-Continent Library, which is another great resource for entrepreneurs. Square One, their resources they have there. And we put up a map of coffee shops. It was Kelly Head over there. And he said, I'm gonna pull up coffee shops, just really as an example for our cohort, how to use this. And it blew my socks off at how many coffee shops existed just in Kansas City, right? And I called that out because the question I want to ask you is, in a landscape where you got a lot of quote unquote competitors, but you've been able to stand out and build a brand that people know and like and trust and visit. So talk to me about how you did that.
There's no one single answer. I mean, there's a huge amount of competition, on the retail side of things, as well as with coffee roasters. Kansas City is a pretty big, growing landscape. There's all sorts of mom and pop coffee shops and coffee roasters. I don't know how tapped in you guys are to the coffee world, but there was a large acquisition in the Kansas City market, so the roastery and Messenger have combined into a conglomerate that's now called Fairwave, and they've purchased coffee companies in the metro, as well as up into Minneapolis and now onto the East Coast. So yeah, it's extremely competitive. To set yourself apart, to offer something that's consistent, that that folks can see as competitive with those types of companies. I think for us, being in the West Bottoms, it's kind of a grimy, kind of dirty neighborhood still. There's still a lot of manufacturing. There's railroad hubs, shipping hubs, semi trucks. So what we've really tried to embrace is seeing where people go, right? So they might go to a coffee shop in the River Market. We might have just as much competition with gas station coffee on 12th Street. So what we find is we're trying to serve our community, not necessarily just be in competition with all of the other specialty coffee shops. So our role is to introduce good quality, affordable coffee in this market that might not have other similar options.
Okay, I got you. And then, and And that's a good point. So it sounds like it's more than coffee beans, right? You mentioned the community, right, Jeff? And Jeff, I know there is a ton of competitors in your lane. Like my father-in-law can smoke the best ribs I ever had, and sometimes he caters, right? And so, but you have, because it's one of those industries where folks feel like, well, I can jump in it. There's low barrier to entry. I can cook, right? I know how to cook. I love it. So, what's your approach to stand out? What's your strategy to stand out in a competitive market?
Yeah, I think just two sides. Giving our client the best experience that they can get, and that's going to be done through our team. We really focus a lot on our team. We pay 100% of their health insurance for full-time staff. Next year, we're introducing 401k matching. There's a lot of stuff we're doing for our team, and I really believe that our team is what, they're the face of the company. Even if you're a part-time person, we're really taking care of our part-time people. We try to do quarterly team outings. I'm not afraid to close the calendar on a Sunday to have a team outing or a family pool party in the summer, just to help build that culture. And our part-time staff's told us, our full-time employer doesn't even do this for the holidays, and we're so appreciative. And we know that our part-time staff is the face of the company at events, and also the training. We're not just taking our event staff and throwing them, to an event. They're going through an intense training program, being paired up with a buddy while they, start working their first few events. And so I think that's probably the two biggest, take care of the client, but take care of your people, because if you take care of your people, they'll take care of your customer or your client.
Absolutely. So it flows downhill, right? Take care of your people, right? And so, as we kind of wrap up here, you all probably remember in one of our cohorts we had this gentleman come in, and gentleman named Rosie. There was a session where a guy named Rosie. Some may have had him, some may have not, but he always said something that made a lasting impact on me as an entrepreneur. And I'm probably paraphrasing. I'll probably mess it up just a little bit. But he compared this journey of running a small business and growing a small business. The statement that I'll probably mess it up, but the statement he used, he said, "This is one of the holiest undergoings that you'll ever do." And I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" And this is what he meant. He said, "I can give somebody, $5, $100, $1,000. I can teach them something. But to give somebody a livelihood," he argued that there's really nothing more that you can physically give another human being than a livelihood, a skill set, an ability to earn an income, an ability to take care of their family. And for me, I always found that as one of the most gratifying things, to being an entrepreneur. As we wrap up, I want to give each of you all an opportunity to talk about briefly, the most gratifying thing about your journey thus far, and then I want you to partner that with what you would say to an entrepreneur who may be stuck and is looking to scale and continue to grow their business. So we'll do those two things, and then we'll wrap up.
I will start. So when I decided to quit my engineering job and go into the business full time, my wife was already operating 2 years in the business. But when I quit, that meant I lost all of my benefits. And so for a whole year, my family didn't have health insurance at all. So my whole goal as an entrepreneur was to figure out, how does this small business qualify for health care, not only for my family, but for the family of my staff. And so the moment we were able to get quality health care, one, it's quality because I need it, right? And I'm not gonna just pick any healthcare, but being able to provide that to our staff. And some staff who's been in early ed for many years have never had the opportunity to have access to healthcare. So that's one of the most gratifying moments as an entrepreneur, being able to provide not only what my family needed, thank you for the cold bug and COVID not coming during that time, but also being able to provide that for families within my staff.
Thank you.
I've got two married couples that work full time, and that started this year. And so I think one of the biggest, gratifying things is just thinking like, yes, we had full time people, and I know I'm, responsible for their livelihoods, but then when you have the entire household income that you're responsible for, and you're, making sure that they've got health insurance so their kids are taken care of, that's a real, aha moment, and a proud moment. And your team wants you to buy more stuff, and we need 10 more staff, and blah 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 blah. But at the end of the day, I'm responsible for all of our full-time staff and their livelihoods and some of their kids, and the decisions you make are going to have trickling impact on your team. And so I think that's probably the biggest. It's new, it's recent to have two married couples working full time and knowing that you're responsible for the entire household income.
Wow.
And what was I supposed to say? One more thing?
What would you say? What would you say to an entrepreneur? Give some advice.
Don't be afraid, but also slow. It's okay to scale slow, to grow slow. Don't be afraid of challenges. A little success story. We ran the food service for the Boy Scout camp in Osceola this past year. We did 210,000 meals in 10 weeks. A lot of my staff was hell-bent that we didn't do that because we're a luxury caterer out of Kansas City. July is a very slow month for us. I explained to them, we're going to do a spin-off division that's going to be our hospitality division. We hired 40 remote people. They lived down there for the summer. I got pushback that we were going to do this. I had, people saying you don't want to do this. It's going to be the biggest headache. It was very successful. The camp loved it. The scouts loved it. The campers enjoyed it. The staff that was seasonal had a really good time, despite it being, hot in a summer camp kitchen. But, had I listened to all the naysayers, like, you don't want to do this, you're not going to do this, you shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do it. Don't be afraid of risks. I, definitely had my concern of some of those risks, and he said, as you grow and you take on a new contracts, that, means more money. And so then, I had to go to U.S. Food and beg them for net 30, and because I at one point owed them $150,000, just because we were doing such a huge volume in a short amount of time. But don't be afraid of risks and challenges, and just make sure you work through those logistics to set yourself up for success.
That's great advice. Ian, you're going to bring us home. Bring us home.
So definitely the most gratifying part of all of this has been the community that we've been able to build. That's had a lot of really fun, exciting times together. We've had staff members get married. We've had a lot of folks meet, and there's also been a lot of funerals. There's but overall, just the community that's come about because of the business. Really just over coffee. Again, I don't want to see any quotes out there, right? But if there's advice to anyone, it would be, do it while you're young and you've got the time and the energy. You mentioned it. I've got an 11-day-old at home, super tired right now.
Congratulations, man.
Appreciate you. But I couldn't imagine trying to do what I did now. Putting in I open and close the shop every single day, 7 days a week, roasted all the coffee, did the deliveries, and it would just be impossible to try and start that over.
Absolutely. Do it young.
I would like to close with entrepreneurs need to have grit. You need to have grit. Before I stepped in full time, or even opened the business, barrier entry was $650K to build out our center. We had 3 kids under 4 with zero money in the bank. I would go what I call my power hour, lunch hour, and I would go to each bank. I went to 13 different banks and got a no, I can't give you that loan, until the builder and owner of the facility saw that effort and was like, you know what, I will take out the loan on your behalf and I'll put it into the lease. So you do not quit. If that's your purpose, do not quit. You have to have grit.
Thank you. Y'all give them a hand, our panelists. How I scaled it. For anybody in the room, scan this QR code if you want more information about this Scale Up cohort. Trust me, it's a fantastic cohort next year. So you would be applying to be in the next one, which is which is our 10-year anniversary. So we're gonna go all out on this one. But then also engage with the Small Business Development Center, y'all. Y'all have a good one, and we'll see you around. If you want more information about anything with SBDC, feel free to come and talk to us. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Again.